Right, well, that was epic listening to Remy, and I know we're going to hear some amazing stories again. So, Harmony, welcome and thank you again for joining us. You're a bit of a VIP to the space of chatting about your story, aren't you?
Yeah, but thanks for having me.
So you've got to come in closer there. There we go. Yeah, it feels funny.
Get on your arms.
So, look, we've heard lots of variations on your story, and, you know, we're really grateful. You've come and spoken to a lot of the Year 9 girls who are probably experiencing similar stories. But I'm really curious, you said something before we started recording that you just, listening to Remy's story then, a lot of that really resonated with you. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my entire life I've sort of gone through the same thing with, like, my mum. She was, you know, a bit of an alcoholic and everything, so it was very tough, like, for my dad especially, like, waking up early and having to go to work, but sometimes my mum not even, like, being home, and he would have to worry whether, like, he could go to work or not, and, like, just stuff like that. And
so how old were you when that was happening?
Quite young. But it wasn't just that as well. It was a lot of stuff, like, that went on inside the house as well that sort of, like, affected me, and probably how I treated people when I was in high school, because that's sort of what I just saw in my own, like, household, I guess.
Do you mind if I ask it? So I guess we're alluding to the drugs and alcohol sort of changed the way that your mum behaved. So was it a violent place to be? Was it aggressive?
Yeah, sometimes. When alcohol was involved in my household, like, it was definitely a bit violent. Or it wasn't more verbally violent, which was, like, really hard because it wasn't with just my dad. It was also, like, towards me as well, which affected me and, like, obviously my mental health, because things that I would listen to that my mum would say, I would actually think that that's who I am, I guess.
Yeah. And at a young age, you know, obviously this started before high school. Was it in a primary school kind of space?
Probably more high school.
Yeah. And that's tough, Harms, because you were dealing with a lot of things going on, and, you know, adolescence and all those changes, and not having that support person there as a strong woman to, you know, help you through those challenges. You had someone who obviously had her own demons, and using alcohol was something, but a tough thing for you probably would have been, you know, how do you process that, you know? As an adult, I can turn around if someone's drinking and they say stuff, I can say, well, that's their own stuff. That was from when they were drinking and it's changed it. But as a child, you know, what your mum says, irrespective of if she's sober or not, that has a pretty big impact. How did that impact you?
Well, when I got into high school, I guess when I found the group that I went into, I think drinking alcohol was sort of just, like, normal to me. Yeah. So, like, when we would go out on the weekends and sort of do that, or do other substances that were a bit, you know, more harsh, I just thought it was really normal. Like, it was okay to be doing it at such a young age, because I didn't really know better, I guess. Like, no one was there to tell me that it's not okay, which was hard.
So how much of, you know, like, a lot of the time when people, whether they're drinking or they're smoking or taking any sort of recreational job, it's sometimes about how they remove themselves from the pain that they're feeling. So would you say that, you know, we're talking when you're pretty young, so this started sort of year 7 and 8, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're out of the blocks pretty early there. Yeah. But I find it interesting that you say, you know, you didn't know any different. So do you feel like the alcohol and the drugs was initially a way for you to feel better and to try and cope with what was going on?
Definitely, 100%. I feel like it was just a bit of, like, a getaway, and, like, I don't know, it was just, like, different, I guess, when I would, like, be that sort of person. But then sometimes it's really not good, because it would lead me to things that I shouldn't have been doing.
Yeah, and I remember you saying that your friends who you chose, you know, in middle school years perhaps weren't, you know, a good choice. And I suppose looking back on that now, you know, what would you have told Harmony Arms back then? Like, what would you have told
Remy's got the mustache. He's a little different.
What would you have told yourself back then? You know, what would have been that advice in grade 7 or grade 8? And
probably just to, like, calm down and stop, you know, like, think about what I'm actually doing instead of, like, just doing it. Because I think when I was a young age, like, I did not care, like, you told me to do something and I just sort of like do it just for
So
the fun
true.
of it. Yeah.
So look, I've got a question for you. So like listening to you there saying you're going to go back. So imagine that we could actually do that. Older Harmony, much better version, goes back to younger Harmony and says, hey, younger Harmony, I think here's what you're doing. I reckon I can picture what younger Harmony would have said. Do you reckon you would have listened to that advice?
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
So for me, I often wonder when we talk about this advice for other people, is it possible that you can change what you're actually doing? Is there any way that you think anyone could have done something for you? So whether it's school, friends or otherwise, that may have changed what happened for you at that age?
I don't know. At that age, I feel like a few people tried, but I wasn't willing to listen. It was just like whatever I want to do is what I'm going to do. Like I don't really care.
Yeah, right.
So I don't really think so.
Because I know one of the things we talk about in the workshops, and again, Tommy has broached with some of our kids, is this idea of the mask. So, you know, again, I picture the wonderful, sweet little child that you were at that age, Harmony, and, you know, privileged to have spent time with you in your formative years. And I think about, like, you were angry, weren't you, when you were probably a little bit aggressive. I know when you spoke to, nodding, and when you spoke to kids and other adults, like, it was probably a case that you weren't exactly a pleasant person to be around a lot of the time. But that mask for you was underneath that. You were really hurting, weren't you?
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit, so if we were to take away the mask from young Harmony, I sense a lot of that was your own sense of self-worth. Like from what you're saying, the way Mum spoke to you really had a massive impact on how you felt about yourself, your self-esteem and your self-worth. You were just hating on yourself, weren't you?
Yeah, I had no like self-esteem, self-worth. I just didn't like love myself as like the way I, do now, obviously. But like back then I just didn't think anyone really cared, or I was just like, I felt like a nothing really.
And I remember you talking about it, saying there was kind of a turning point where you thought, what's going on actually isn't safe and I'm getting into some pretty hectic situations. But I remember you saying you really felt like you were trapped, like the friends that you were with, you kind of thought, well, where do I go from here? You know, I've set this standard of who Harmony is. I'm this tough chick who doesn't deal with anything. How do I then find that other nice group of friends? And you kind of explained it as I was trapped. You know?
Yeah, I definitely was. It was really hard to for me to think that I could even find other friends, because I had this sort of like label on me, I guess, that I was like, that tough like chick, and no one really sort of like liked me because I was just, I don't know, I was like the aggressive one, just like all my other friends. But when I actually did find a good group of people, I was actually like, wow, like I can actually change, from here on.
How did that feel when you found
so
a different group?
So
That's
good.
awesome.
It was amazing.
Do you feel like you weren't in the state to go and find friends because you didn't like yourself, so you couldn't possibly believe that someone else would like you? Was that a thing?
Yeah, definitely. That was probably one of the main things for me.
So when do you reckon that started changing? Because, clearly the Harmony we see before us is a very different being. When do you think that's maybe something that started changing for you?
The start, or the end of year 9 and the start of year 10, I really wanted to move schools and everything, but this one friend wanted me to stay and keep going and everything, so I did. And then we found other friends, and I just connected with them really well, and they didn't really judge me for who I used to be, and they just saw me as who I was then. And nothing was sort of brung up about the past me or anything like that. It was just they just liked me because I was who I was at that time.
And with some teachers as well, I know I was so fortunate that I had a chance to teach her in year 11 and year 12. And the Harmony who I hear Bully talking about, in middle school years is not the Harmony who I know. And the conversations that we had in class and this mature, amazing young lady who you are now. But that would have been tough too with teachers, seeing you in middle school and then coming up into senior and going, well, you know what, you're Harmony and that's how you behaved then, and I'm going to treat you the same way. How did you kind of deal with who this new Harmony was?
Only 2 teachers actually. There was 3 or 4 maybe.
Okay.
But there was 2 teachers. One, Miss Gill, she requested me every single year because she just saw something in me, sort of believed.
And she had you in grade 7. Yeah, so for all the people that you could say, you go, I'd forgive Miss Gill for going, I've done my time, no more Harmony Conrades for me.
But she never gave up.
Wow.
But Yeah, it was definitely hard because, like, some teachers who would sort of come in for, like, a relief, they would look at me and they'd be like, I just knew straight away because I had them when I was younger, so it was like, oh, they still think I'm the same person. But then at the end of the lesson, they'd come up and they'd be like, wow, you did really well this lesson, like, good on you. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not that person anymore.
So how did that make you feel to hear someone just acknowledge that?
Yeah, it was good, actually. It happened quite a bit. I would have a teacher and I'd be like, oh, no, but... yeah, they actually saw a different side when I sort of matured, which was nice.
So I want to ask you something. So going back to those periods of time, like, so we often talk about peer pressure, but I want to ask you about this thing that we're going to call peer reputation. So how much of what you did was about you trying to fit in with the group? Like, were you, so you're nodding already. And I guess what I'm trying to allude to is that they weren't saying, hey, Harmony, you need to do this. You were going, well, I feel like I need to fit in with this group and stay cool. So talk me through that. Like, what were the thought processes, let's say whether it's alcohol, drugs, partying, or just your even behaviour patterns? How much did you change the way you behaved just so you could sort of feel safe and connected to that group of friends, even though you knew they weren't good friends for you?
I did a lot of things just to fit in that group,
Yeah.
especially because we were hanging out with a lot of older boys as well. So I thought that I had to be, like, cool for them, I guess, because they were older. And
So what does cool look like? You don't have to go into it. No? Okay.
Not something you want to be.
Yeah,
Cool
wow.
isn't the best, It's really not that fun. But, yeah, I guess I just wanted to fit in so badly that I just did whatever
And wanting
did.
to find that love, I suppose, and that affection. And because I love that you were talking about now that you're someone who has that self-love and, can practice that. So what are those kind of things that you do now that make you turn around and go, I love who I am and I celebrate every part of, who I am as a woman? What do you do?
Like in my spare time?
Yeah.
I actually have my own little journal and I do some manifestations, 3 things I'm, like, grateful for in life. I like to write down some self-love quotes sometimes. That just, makes me feel better. And just other quotes as well. I love doing that sort of stuff though. My mum, actually, because we're sort of on good terms now, she bought me a little book that I can write in that has, like, self-love stuff and all that sort of thing.
So where did you find this out? So that's a skill, isn't it? That's an idea that didn't just magically appear one day. Where did that come from?
I think social media. I liked to follow a lot of uplifting, like, Instagram pages and that. So the ideas sort of just came from there.
That's a bit shocking, isn't it? So what I'm hearing is that social media has been used for
It's a
good.
positive influence.
Oh, that's I think that's the first time anyone's ever said that and been serious about it.
Yeah.
So you found this stuff on social media and you engage with it.
Yeah.
And that's been some of the ideas and the changes for you, really, that's brought about to the young person that you are today.
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite amazing. Does that surprise you, Anna?
It does a little bit. Well, not for you, Harmony. Like, it doesn't shock me that that's something that you've searched out. But, the majority of, young teens coming through school won't actually use social media in a positive way and will actually be, a negative. It actually doesn't breed self-love in them. It sometimes breeds self-hate because they're constantly looking at this is how someone else is living their life, or they've got this perfect body and they've got... We all know that, there's a lot of trickery and there's, 1/10 of a second in that photo. But I think one of the wonderful things that we've done, through the way the care program has been and, gratitude and empathy and mindfulness and that journaling that we kind of did through care class too, I feel like it resonated, with a lot of people. And I love that, you said that too, that you've really enjoyed it too, Harms, with extra programs and stuff that you've done. And we've done a bit of mindfulness in class and spent a bit of time talking about it. But for those people who are out there that think, well, that's not really my jam, what is it that you can do? How has it made you feel?
It's made me feel so good about myself. Like, it really does. It just uplifts your spirit and, like, brings a positive outlook on so many things, especially, like, it's changed my life in a way doing that. It's a really good exercise, I reckon.
That's awesome.
Do you think it's fair to say, though, that, I think some people might assume that we're bringing 4 amazing young people in the room today and that everything's perfect in your life and nothing goes wrong? Because I think that's something you'd have to acknowledge, that this skill will be something you have to keep chipping away at. Like, life's not exactly perfect for you. Still going through some challenges now, aren't you?
Yeah. I thought you know, you always think that life is going to get so much better when you've been through so much, but life's still always going to throw challenges at you. And like this year, like last year, it was amazing. Like I finally found a good group of friends. But then this year, like I came in and, you know, things aren't the best with my family. So I've had to like, you know, move out and everything. So you're still always going to go through things. But like Remy said before, it's like, you know, how you take that on and pursue it, I guess, for yourself.
Yeah, so you're not playing the victim, are you? You're
No.
not saying it's someone else's fault and playing the hate game and then that whole toxic vibe. So if I said to you now, we won't labour too much about the old Harmony because it's so much time spent talking to the new Harmony. It's kind of weird saying it that way. You know, like thinking back, is there anything or anyone that you can think back to that could have changed the way things went for you? Or is it just like, well, that was the way things were going to play out and it doesn't matter? Like, can you think of anything or anyone that might have been able to change things for you?
Not really.
So you're just going, well, it is what it is. I don't have any regrets. It's just the way it was.
I definitely don't have any regrets. I mean, I wish I could change some things, but like at the end of the day, I don't regret anything because like it made me who I am today. And I guess I've learned a lot from that. So I feel like if I didn't do all that, you know, stuff when I was younger, then maybe I'd be in that position now.
Yeah, wow. Well, let's get to that because, you know, some of the things that I've been so impressed with, you've got an absolute burning passion to help people. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, definitely.
And, you know, Harmony, you've been in a few times completely off your own back to come and talk to some Year 9 girls. So, you know, backward mapping, you can probably see a lot of yourself in those young girls and a lot of the themes that are running through. So talk us through what drives you forward now. Where do you see yourself going in the next couple of years? What, you know, celebrate some of your successes. You're going to university. Tell us about life mapping forward for Harmony Conrades.
Well, I'm going to university and I'm going to study psychology. And then I hope to still come into PBC, obviously, and do, like, you know, the programs I've been doing. But I really want to start, like, my own company on, like, mental health awareness. Do things in schools or, like, you know, anything, community services and stuff like that. But a big goal of mine is probably to open a studio where people can come and just feel really comfortable and sort of do, like, those mindfulness journals or like paint or do puzzles and sort of just connect with other people that they don't sort of know. Then also have my own little room where of course they can come and like speak to me about anything that they need to talk about.
It's like a self-love studio, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, well, look, and that's exciting. Like if I'd just said to you in grade 7, I walked up to you and said, look, I know things are pretty crappy for you at the moment, but don't worry, we're going to be doing a podcast, which wasn't even a thing back then. You're going to tell me that you're going to university, you're going to study psychology and you want to help people. How do you reckon that would have gone across?
I probably would have laughed and said, that's definitely not me.
Yeah. So isn't it interesting? Because it takes some words from Remy, you know, that idea of hope. So even saying to some kids, like, don't worry, like things seem bad, but, you know, here's an example where things do get better for both of you, that you could have mapped forward and gone, if we could have put you in that spot now, here's the way you're going to speak. Like, it's hard to believe, but here you are. And it's quite impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Definitely impressive.
And I feel like that mentorship has really been something that's helped you in your healing process. And I've only heard from it, you know, through Bully and Jackie, how amazing your influence and impact has been on those students. Has that helped you to kind of deal with?
Definitely. It feels good to sort of like share my story and like impact other people and hopefully like, you know, sort of switch their lives around, you know, them sort of like look at me and be like, oh wow, there actually is hope. Oh wow, like look what she's doing now, like I could be doing something like that. And like, yeah, it feels good.
Inspire. Well, look, I think it's fair to say, you know, there's still a lot of emotion now. Every time prior to today, when you talk about stuff, you get quite emotional. So, and that's okay, by the way. You know, you're owning your story. So I guess it's an acknowledgement that you don't just push this stuff to the side, do you? It's always there. And is it fair to say that every time you tell your story that you just chip away and you start feeling just that little bit better?
Definitely. I feel like because I didn't talk about it for such a long time to no one, like no one ever really knew what was going on. That's why I feel like the first few times I sort of spoke about it, it was very emotional because it was like me speaking about it for the first few times, which is really weird. But then once I, you know, actually opened up to people and stuff, like it felt good.
You get better.
Storytelling. You know, it's empowering, isn't it? You kind of feel those amazing, you know, endorphins pumping in when you finish up, and I know that's something we've spoken about, how you just feel like it's something that you should have always done, you know. You're a great storyteller, and hopefully those stories will help other young PBC students who you will then continue on to mentor, which is going to be amazing, Harms. Looking forward to it.
So, Harms, we are so grateful. I know I've said this to you a few times. It's a privilege, isn't it, to be able to ride that journey with you. And Remy alluded to it before. You know, we get the opportunity to see you from go to woe, and it's really lovely to be able to sit here now and have the opportunity for you to tell your story. And I know we're going to get a chance to hear it many times over. So, yeah, thank you so much. It's epic.
Thanks for having me.
Well done, Harms.